Now, in this part of the lecture, we are going to talk about question tag. Question tag. Now, what is a question tag all about? Question tag is a device in the English language, and it involves a speaker making a statement or an assumption and immediately asking the listener for confirmation. Now, so the question tag is a device which involves a speaker making a statement. Now, this statement, like I said before, can also be called an assumption. And because it's an assumption, the speaker is not sure of what he has said, and he needs a confirmation from the listener. So to do that, he asks the listener a short question, and the listener responds by what? By giving him a short answer. Now, in a question tag situation, it is made up of two parts. The first part is the statement, while the second part is the tag itself. A question tag situation is made up of two parts. The first part is the statement, while the second part is what? Is the tag. Now, this statement can be positive and it can be negative. The statement can be positive and it can be negative. Let's consider an example. She reads very well. She reads very well. Now, this sentence is positive because it does not contain any negative particle. Now, the negative form of this sentence will now be, she does not read. She does not read very well. This is negative. Now, this is not the only way that you can make a sentence to become negative. You can make a sentence to be negative in about 3 ways. Now, the first way we can make a sentence to be negative is what I have just said. By adding a negative particle. By adding a negative particle. Now, in the example we have here, we made our example, she reads very well, to be, she does not read very well. What makes this sentence to become negative is the inclusion of what? Of the not, which we are called a negative particle. So this negative particle can be not, or the contracted form, which is N'(T). So we can make a sentence to become negative by adding a negative particle, which may be not or not N'(T). Now, another way we can make a sentence to become negative is by adding a negative prefix to that word. When you add a negative prefix to a word, for instance, if I add the negative prefix IL, what's a prefix? A prefix is a part of a word that is added at the beginning of this word. So if I add the prefix IL to legal, the word becomes illegal, meaning what? Not legal. So when I add IL to legal, the word becomes illegal, meaning what? Not legal. I can add IR. I can add it to a word like regular. It becomes irregular, meaning what? Not regular. Another one is AB, which is another negative prefix. I can add it to a word like normal, and the word becomes what? Abnormal, meaning what? Not normal. So, we can make a sentence become negative by, number one, by adding a negative particle which is not or N'(T). Another way you can make it to become negative by adding a negative prefix to a word like IL, IR, AD, UN, IN, and so on and so forth. Now, the third way we can make a sentence to become negative is by using words that are negative in meaning. Some words are actually negative in meaning, and such words include words like what? Feel, need to, so forth. These words are what? Are negative in meaning. And whenever they occur in a particular sentence, that sentence becomes negative. So like I said, the statement can be positive or it can be negative. And we have considered when the sentence is positive and when the sentence is negative. Now let's look at the tag. The tag, on the other hand, is realized in the following way. Let's consider another example. She can swim very well. She can swim very well. Now, this sentence is positive. If I want to form the tag is made up of an auxiliary verb followed by a subject. So, if I want to form the tag for this, it becomes can't she. Now, can she is an auxiliary verb. This is formed from can. In other words, I am repeating the auxiliary verb here, and I'm also repeating the subject here. So the tag is made by what? By repeating the auxiliary verb in the statement in the tag, and by also repeating the subject in the statement in the tag. So she can swim very well. We now have what? Can she? Now let's consider some rules of question tag. Some rules of question tag. Now, number one rule says that when the statement is positive, then the tag will be what? Negative. Let's look at some examples. Example 1. We said she can swim very well, which is what? Positive. Then the tag will be what? Can't she, which is what? Negative. So, it's negative. So when the statement is positive, the tag must be what? Negative. We have she can swim very well, positive, while the tag is what? Can she? Let's look at another example. He has been told. He has been told. Now, the tag will be what? Hasn't he? Hasn't he? Once again, I'm repeating the word, the auxiliary verb here, which is has, and that is has there. Another example. They should have listened. They should have listened to her. They should have listened to her. Now, to form this tag, I will have what? Shouldn't they? Shouldn't they? So once again, it is the auxiliary verb in the statement here that I'm repeating. So all these are what are positive statements, while the tag will be what? Negative. Now let's look at the second rule of question tag. The second rule of question tag. Number 2. It is the opposite of the first one. When the statement is negative, then the tag will be what? Positive. When the statement is negative, the tag is what? Positive. Let's consider some example. He won't come. He won't come. Now, what is won't? Won't is a combination of will plus what? Plus not, which becomes what? Won't. So he won't come is negative. So the tag must be what? Will he? He won't come. The tag will be what? Will he? Number 2. She couldn't have gone home. She couldn't have gone home. She couldn't have gone home. The tag was could she? Could she? Another example. You to leave. You are not supposed to. Sorry, let me take that, please. You are not supposed to leave. The tag will be what? Are you? So, once again, when the statement is negative, the tag is positive. He won't come. Will he? They couldn't have gone home. Could she? She couldn't have gone home. Could she? You are not supposed to leave. Are you? So that is the second rule of question tag. Now let's look at the third rule. Now, the third rule of question tag has to do with a situation whereby we don't have an auxiliary verb. Now, whenever you want to form the tag, like I said before, it is the auxiliary verb that you have in the statement that you have to repeat in the tag. But there are some situations whereby you don't have an auxiliary verb in the statement. What you have is a lexical verb. And we cannot repeat a lexical verb in the statement. Look at some examples. She killed the snake. She killed the snake. He writes for them. And they work in Lagos. That. Now, if you look at these three examples, you will find that the verbs that we have in the examples are lexical verbs. They are not auxiliary verbs. Killed is a lexical verb. Write is a lexical verb. Well is a lexical verb. And we cannot repeat any of these verbs in the tag. For instance, I can say, she killed the snake. Killed the sheep doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So what do we do when we have a situation like this, when there are no auxiliary verbs that we can repeat in the tag? Now, what you have to do is that you follow the following process. Number one, you first of all introduce a form of verb do. Introduce a form of verb do. And this form of verb do can be do, does, or did. So the first thing whenever you are confronted with a situation of this nature is that you will introduce a form of verb do, which can be do, does, did. Now, number two. Now, the form of verb do that you are going to introduce must agree with the lexical verb in tense and in number. So, the form of verb do to be introduced must agree with the lexical verb in the statement, both in tense and in number. So the form of verb do to be introduced must agree with the lexical verb in the statement, both in tense and in number. Now, the third rule is that you must obey or observe. You must obey or observe rules number one, rules 1 and 2. You must observe or obey rules 1 and 2. And lastly, you repeat the subject. Repeat the subject in the statement, in the tag. Now, so anytime you are confronted with questions like this, when you don't have an auxiliary verb, these are the process or you have to follow. Number one is that you will introduce a form of verb do, which may be do, does, did. Then, the form of verb do that you are going to introduce must agree with the lexical verb in the statement, both in tense and in number. C, you have to obey or observe rule number 1 and 2. And D, you have to repeat the subject in the statement in the tag. Now let's apply these to the questions we have on the board. Now, she killed the snake. The first thing we have to do is what? Introduce a form of verb do. So we have do, does, and did. We have introduced that. Now we come to the second one. The form of verb do to be introduced must agree with the lexical verb in the statement, both in tense and in number. So I will ask myself, the verb here, killed, is it present tense or past tense? You notice that the verb is past tense. So in other words, I will eliminate these two options. I will eliminate do and does. I have left it what? With did. Because the verb is what? Is killed. So I'm going to use keep that did. Then we must observe rule number 1 and 2. Rule number 1 says that when the statement is positive, the tag is negative. When the statement is negative, the tag is what? Is positive. So I will ask myself, is she killed the snake? Is it positive or negative? She killed the snake is positive. And because of that, our tag must be what? Negative. So to make it to be negative, what would I do? I will have N''T. So the word becomes didn't. Then the last rule says that what? You repeat the subject in the statement in the tag. So I will repeat the subject here. It becomes what? Didn't she? So she killed the snake. Didn't she? She killed the snake. Didn't she? Now let's look at rule number example 2. He writes for them. He writes for them. Now in this example, the first thing we are going to do is what? We will introduce a form of verb do. So we have do, does, and we have did. So we have introduced a form of verb do. We have do, does, and did. Now number 2 says that the form of verb do to be introduced must agree with the lexical verb in the statement, both in tense and in number. So I will ask myself, the verb in the statement here, he writes for them, which is right, is this present tense or past tense? You will notice that this is actually present tense. Because this is present tense, I will eliminate what did. So did is out of it. I am left with what do and does. Then I need to ask myself another question. The verb write, is it singular or plural? Is it singular or plural? You discover that this verb is what? Is singular. So we must have what? A singular verb here. So we have do and does. Do is a plural verb, while does is what? A singular verb. So because of that, I will eliminate do. I am left with what? Does. So I put my does here. Then I'll go back to rule number 3 here, which says that observe rule number 1 and 2. Rule number 1 says that when the statement is positive, the tag is negative. And number 2 says that when the statement is negative, the tag is positive. We discover that this statement is positive. So the tag must be negative. So what do? I will add N''T. Then after I've done that, I will now go to the number 4, which is what? Repeat the subject in the tag. So I will repeat the subject here, it becomes what? Doesn't he? Doesn't he? Then the last one, after you have done the same thing, you discover that the answer will be what? Don't they? Don't they? Don't they? How is it don't they? The first thing you do is what? Introduce the form of verb do, which is what? Do, does, and what? Did. Then you ask yourself, is the verb there present tense or past tense? You discover that verb is what? Is present tense. So because of that, we eliminate what did. Then we have to ask again, the verb when, is it singular or plural? is actually what? Plural. But do is what? Is plural. While does is what? Is singular. So we must have what? A plural verb. So that's why we eliminate what? Does. We are now left what? With do. And once we have do, which is our do here. Now the next thing we ask ourselves, we observe rule number 1 and 2. We find out that what? The statement here is what? Is positive. Then the type of what? Negative. So to make do negative, I will have what? N apostrophe T. That's what we have been told. Then lastly, I will now repeat the subject here, which is what? They. So that's how we come about don't they. So anytime you are faced with a situation like this, these are the things we are going to do. Introduce a form of verb do. Then the form of verb do has to agree with what? The legislative verb in the statement, both the tense and the number. Then you observe what? Rule number 1 and 2. Then you repeat what? The subject in the tag. So this concludes the third rule of what? Question tag. Now let's quickly go to the fourth rule of question tag. Fourth rule.